And will be placed on hold
Good
until the
morning
next
all.
caller arrives.
My name is Amit Sharma and we are in the 22nd session of learning as base metadata loading. So in this session we'll talk about how do you load and populate your account dimension. This is my 22nd session of Essbase Expert Learning. You can go to my document, you can go to our blog or the blogs or the website to download other video tutorials. So let's see what is planned for today. So in the previous sessions we discussed about how do you load metadata. Some basic examples we discussed in detail. Today we'll see a more professional or realistic example of the industry. We load the metadata into our practice application. So the agenda for today's class is, first we'll talk about the metadata format which I retrieve from my business. I retrieve the metadata from my business. We'll discuss about this and analyze the metadata. Then we see what are the various steps are involved in loading the metadata into Essbase Cube, and how to create load rule file and load the metadata into Essbase Cube. And finally, we'll talk about how do you deal with errors or rejects if you find during metadata load. So let's start with understanding the typical example of metadata. So I have one metadata which I have recently extracted from my business. For the simplicity, this is pretty huge. The metadata is very huge. Your typical account dimension members, your asset and liabilities, and various kind of asset and various kind of liabilities. In order to simplify this is the actual metadata I have retrieved from my business. However, to simplify our learning, I have taken a snap of it, a small piece of the complete metadata, so that we can focus on the process of loading metadata and dealing with the errors rather than talking about metadata load. So I have got this metadata. For simplicity, I have given a header over here. So by looking at the header, you can easily identify what is what. So as you see, this is my typical metadata for account dimension, which represents my common chart of account of my organization. Let's first see what we are going to do with this metadata file and how do we load this metadata into our Essbase Cube. As we discussed in the previous classes, the load rule files map my data source with my Essbase Cube. The metadata which we receive from the business may not be into the format that can directly be loaded into Essbase Cube. Therefore, we require load rule which defines the rules to load the metadata into Essbase Cube. So load rule may be working as a mapping file or filtering your metadata from source to target, or mapping your metadata from source to target, right? So this is my metadata. I have got my metadata. Let's first understand the characteristics or the property of this metadata. However, in the previous sessions, we discussed all this information, all these steps in detail. I'll quickly recapitulate once again about metadata properties with respect to this example. Now you can easily identify the metadata is from top to bottom. I have got repeated record from left to right. So it's a top to bottom metadata load, and therefore in Essbase context we call this generation reference method. So first property of the metadata is from top to bottom. Second property, you see I have got metadata which is account dimension members along with their alias. You see the member name and the alias. Right. So I've got member name and alias. This is one thing. This metadata I'm going to load into my practice application. This is a financial operation practice application we prepared in the previous sessions. So this takes you very close to real-time problem. This is my account dimension and all these member of my balance sheet, asset and liabilities should go inside this account dimension, right? So we'll follow the same steps typically we follow. We use in the past examples, load the metadata. We follow all the steps one by one again. So step first is create load rule. File, new, under the scripts you can see rule file. Step second, open the data source. Now my data source is a CSV file. Another point to specify over here, the source type is data source is .csv file and it is in local file system. In my local system, my local client file system. So this is my source file account hierarchy.csv. The next step is we need to specify the delimiter which distinguish one record to another record, and the default is tab. In my example, the delimiter is comma, right? So that's another point I make a note over here. The delimiter is comma, right? So there is an option. We have done this couple of times in the past as well. There's an option called data property which allow you to tag the delimiter which is comma, right? We set the delimiter. Now you see the complete record is split into multiple fields, right? The additional thing we'll do over here in this example, there's header as well, data header. I kept this header for your understanding for simplicity. Account hierarchy 0, I use the industry terms, account alias 0, account hierarchy 1 and account hierarchy 2 and their corresponding alias. Now, typically when we retrieve the metadata, account metadata, it's in hierarchical format and therefore we tag them hierarchy 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's easy for us to recognize. Now we'll specify the header. I don't want to load the first row. Naturally, it's a header. Therefore, it is no meaning to load first row. I would ignore this first row. I'll go to data source property under header section. I specify number of lines to skip is 1, right? I skip the row 1. And next step, I am ready to do mapping. We define mapping. So mapping is what, or map from source data to your target SPSQ. So let's start with column first. Before that, I'll switch to dimension load section of load rule. As we discussed in the past, load rule file also used for data load and dimension building both. It's like a two side of the coin. So I switch to another side of the coin and here we'll see dimension build in first example. Right, I'll map the fields now one by one as to specify what is what. So there's an option called field property. You choose a field property and as I'm doing dimension building, so I select this tag, the tab called dimension building properties. So here I specify what is what. So first member goes to my account dimension and it's a top to bottom. So it's a generation number second. Why not generation 1? Because generation 1 is your account dimension. Under this I have got balance sheet, right? So generation 1 would be my account dimension itself and generation 2 would be balance sheet. Therefore I tagged as generation 2. Next is account dimension. It's an alias, right? So I'll tag as alias. It's a generation second alias. Next column will fall under column first. It's a hierarchical. Balance sheet, it got asset and then liabilities, then different kind of assets and different kind of liabilities. This is also account dimension. Generation third, it automatically increment by 1. You just have to look at once. Most often it takes the value automatically. So after balance sheet I'll have total asset, which is at generation 3, and then I would have some kind of asset. Maybe under total asset I've got fixed asset. So fixed asset would be generation 4, right? So for now this is generation 3. Next one is account alias 3. This is an alias name. And next one is account generation 4. And the last one is alias account alias 4. After clicking OK, you see I'm able to see the headers. If you're able to see the headers, it means your mapping is correct. Let's quickly validate once again. This is generation 2. This is alias of generation 3. The generation 2 alias, generation 3 alias, 4 and 4 alias. In typical business term, we read it. Balance sheet has got 2 member, total assets and total liabilities and equity. Under total liabilities, there are various kind of liabilities like current asset, fixed asset and so on. So mapping is done. We are done with step 4. The fifth step says what kind of my metadata. It's a top to bottom or a bottom to up. So in my example, as we analyze, my metadata is from top to bottom, and therefore in as-base context we call this generation reference method. So I go to as-base dimension property and under dimension build setting I'll say I'm loading metadata account and my build method is top to bottom generation reference. Fortunately this is a default property, right? So mapping is also done. Step 5th is done. Step 6th is validate and 7th is load, save the rule. So you see there is a last option called validate. Validation is successful. Validation is successful, but it never ensures that your metadata load would be 100% successful. There may be different factors which may cause your system metadata load to be failed or to be partially loaded. In subsequent sessions, we'll discuss about them. For now, I validate and save my load rule. So I'm going to save into my local system, but the recommended approach is all the load rule and data source should be in your server. Therefore, you can speed up your data load process. So I have given my rule file which has got RUL extension as account load. So I'm done with my metadata load. The final step is to load the metadata and validate this. So in order to load the metadata, I'll right click and click on load data. Now follow all the steps from left to right. So step first says, what is your data source? A data source could be SQL query or it could be flat file. So my example is a flat file. What are you going to do? I'm going to build the metadata. The same load rule file can be used to build metadata or build data. But in this example, we are building metadata. Here you specify data file and the rule file. So my data file is also stored in my local system, and this is CSV file. Account hierarchy is my data source file, and the rule file is also in my file system, which we recently created, called account load rule, right? Now if any error come, where do we find the error? So error to be found in this location and the path given over here. So I already opened this path. In case error comes, where should I see? The error may be metadata load partially done, metadata completely fail, or inconsistent metadata. Anything goes wrong, we would be able to see over here, right? I'm good. You don't need to specify SQL username and password, as if your data source is RDBMS, you require them. I'm done. Let's load this and validate the error. So first thing, if in my case is absolutely successful, the time it has taken for 0.172 and my mod and the config file it has referred over here. However, my metadata is loaded successful. Therefore, you don't find a error file over here. It is completely empty. The error files are not incremental. This is overwritten. Right? Now let's validate our account dimension. So I'm going to open my account dimension and with against my source and validate for this is my typical account dimension which I wanted to load. Let's see and compare, is that what exactly loaded? So first is your balance sheet, right? And balance sheet alias is balance sheet itself. You see, alias is balance sheet. Under balance sheet, you have got two children. You have got two distinct members in column number 3. Two distinct members, therefore there are two children, right? And the aliases are total assets and total liabilities and equity. Total asset, total liability and equity. Under total assets, we have got different kind of assets, and these are their name and these are the alias. You can click on plus and validate. You got 3 members in total asset. There are duplicate members, right? Some members are duplicated, but Essbase is intelligent enough, it loads a member only once if the complete record is duplicate. You see, some records are duplicate, but Essbase is intelligent enough, it will load only one record rather loading multiple records. So this one instance of record has been loaded. You see, if it is successful, there is no question of partial loading. If there is a warning, there may be possibility that a metadata load partially. In this example, it is not the case. Then second hierarchy, second node was 2000. Under 2000, you can see I've got two children, total liabilities and total shareholder equity. Right. So this is a pretty simple example. So I'm stopping over here. We move to the next step of this metadata load. How do you deal with the error files, error records or incomplete loading? In my current example, the metadata loaded successfully, therefore there is no need to talk about metadata. So guys, thanks for joining the session. Once again, thank you very much. My name is Amish Sharma. Join our professional training classes for Oracle BI and OBI training. We are Oracle BI training specialists. We have been training people and consulting for over a decade. Thank you very much and have a good day.